Well, welcome everyone to the Thursday, March 7th meeting of the Underhill Planning Commission. Call this meeting to order. There is one addition to the agenda. I guess it's sort of an addition, which Penny has some insights on the DRB issue, which is already our continuing list of DRB issues. So that's sort of already on the agenda, but Penny is going to join, which is awesome. Is there any public comment other than welcome, Jeff?
No.
Okay. That takes us to the February 15th minutes. Did anyone have any comments or questions on the February 15th minutes?
No.
I didn't see them.
I didn't get them.
Did they not go around on the email? Did I not attach them? Okay, well, we'll push those to the next meeting. Sorry about that. That is my mistake. I don't know how I did that. Sorry about that. Let me make a note. That I need to send the 2:15 minutes. So 2:15 minutes. Okay, so we will not get those done tonight. Okay, that takes us to DRB issue review. Penny, do you think we have some things from last week we have to circle up on? Are you interested in kind of hanging around and hearing those, or did you want to go first? Or I wasn't sure what you had on your mind for tonight.
I think my husband has something on his mind.
Oh, well, that's more important. So I updated the spreadsheet, the online Google Drive spreadsheet. With where we are on things that are done. We're not done on all the ones you gave us before, but it sounds like maybe you wanted to tee us up on one or two more of them. Is that correct?
Yes. So Brian, did you just say you will update the spreadsheet, or you?
I did after you emailed me.
It has to show up on my spreadsheet, so I don't know.
Really, all the way? Nothing in the far right column, huh?
Nothing in that resolution. It's column I, resolution.
Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe I didn't save it. I'll do it on my computer. Check on my computer at home when I get back.
Have you pulled it up right now? Are you able to?
I logged into my Gmail and I just pulled it up. So.
Okay. What do you see on that resolution column?
I don't see anything yet, but it wouldn't be until a little farther down, I guess. Ooh. Oh, yeah, they're in there.
Oh, I see it. I do see now.
Yeah, they're in there. Yep, that's good. Okay. Yeah, because I didn't put anything until item number 17. I think that's where it started.
Oh, okay. So home industry. I think it has to run with the land, or I think the regs say it runs with the land. I think it's specifically called out that way, so that's
yes. So we're leaving it as is. We're having it run with the land. We're not changing anything.
Except it says no change. PC feels it is good that home industry is tied to the resident.
Oh, I'll change that to land.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Okay, so that means.
I can't get into it.
No, I'm sorry.
Are you trying, Sandy?
What I meant, I actually said in my example that it's tied to the residents of the dwelling. What it means is, let me just review this in my mind if I could, that a home industry is permitted to the person in the dwelling, and if the person moves, the home industry closes, basically.
That was the consensus here as well. I think, to use the example everyone was using, not to pick on Phil again, but everyone's Phil. If, like, for Phil to keep operating his garage, Phil couldn't leave and then have the garage just stay operating. Basically, if someone bought Phil's house, they would then have to come back through and get the garage permitted again.
Why?
Well, I thought we were thinking.
Yeah, why?
Or did I take the note wrong?
Yeah,
I don't think.
How do we want it to
I
work?
thought it was going with the land.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
I
goes
do
with
too.
the land.
Not the person.
Yes, with the land.
Right.
Sorry, I'm explaining it
Yeah,
poorly.
so we would
Yes.
not have to go, if it's non-conforming,
But Phil couldn't keep it. The point I'm trying to make is you can't sell the land and keep your business. It goes to the person who bought the property.
Depends on the agreement
Wasn't
they
that
have with.
the hypothetical
Well,
they
it's
had
a-
as an example?
it's a person's option, if it's a business that they could take with them, that's their
Yeah.
business. But if it's a business that is located there and he wants to sell the land with the business, that
Right.
is
Well, the
definitely
other option is
value.
he sells the land and the business, but he works in it still. That would be the other.
That's possible.
I know, I don't see it.
Right now, I believe how it is, I have to look up the regs again, but I believe a home industry is permitted to the land, but it's the person who lives there is running it. So so I think you would call it running with the land. So if that person moves away,
Right.
a person could move into that house and run the business.
Yeah, why not?
But it means that if you want to keep running your business, you can't ever move away. So that's what the regs would say now for a home industry. This isn't because we don't have commercial districts. So this is considered a home industry. You're living in a home and you're running this industry, but we don't often think about it as a really developed commercial business, like say Phil's is. So Phil has this very thriving garage auto repair. If he were to say move down the road and someone else was to buy the house, which I think is his parents' house, so I think technically his parents.
Yeah,
run
his
the
parents'
district.
house is right next door to the garage,
Okay.
yes.
So if they were to move and someone else would buy their house, there is no opportunity in our regs for Phil to continue to own his business. And this may be a one-off, but another example is, for instance, we allowed a conditional use of home industry for, I can't remember their name, but I believe they're on New Road, and it was for a dog grooming business. So they were going to have some dog kennels outside, a dog grooming business in the house. If they left, it makes sense that someone who buys the house would either choose to continue to run the business or not. So Phil's is sort of a one-off because we don't have much industry or commercial businesses in Underhill that are as large as Phil's and as successful as Phil's. So I just use the example that if his parents
Did scratch
moved
you?
and someone else bought his house, I believe he would, per the regs, not be able to run his business anymore. Though, of course, I don't know that anyone would. I don't know there'd be any policing of that. But I just wondered if you wanted the regs to honor that or not.
Penny, I have a question. This is
Yeah.
Lee. I don't know if I'm confusing run with the land or you are. If the home occupation runs with the land, then it runs with the land. It doesn't matter if that person who started it is there or not. That's how I hear it.
Oh, well, that's true. The next person who came in could run Phil's business. But he can't continue. He can't own
If he
the
doesn't
business.
own the land.
Why not? If it runs with the land, what does it matter? The land is still there. The activity for use is still there.
Well, let's just use me and let's make up an example. Let's say I have a business at my house and I move out of my house, I move down the road and I rent my house out. Can I still run the business that I was running out of my garage?
Somewhere else
In your
or out of the
No,
garage?
out of my, so
Why not?
I have my house on Westman. I buy another house that I move to.
Yeah.
I then rent out my house on Westman. And I keep running that business out of the bar next to the house on Westman or something.
Yeah, why not?
But the new person who's living there has nothing to do with it. It's all me.
Yeah, why not?
Is that-
You
is that
still
okay?
own the
You
land.
still own the land.
Yeah, but then I was going to give a second example. So everyone thinks I should be able to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say same example, because I'm not sure. I'm just trying to flesh this out for myself. Let's say I sell the house on Westman. I move to a different house, but the person who buys it says, you know what? you can keep running your business here,
Yeah, and
just
I'll
pay
charge
me,
you
just
this
pay me
much.
some rent. Is that okay?
It is for me, it is by me.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, I think then our comment is not right, Penny, and we need to clean up some language.
Well, here is, for instance, under home industry, page 84, it says, employees, the home industry shall be conducted on site by residents of the dwelling.
So that
And
needs to be,
five non-resident employees.
but that means the owner has to be the resident.
Resident of the dwelling has nothing to do with the owner. It's just the resident of the dwelling.
Am I allowed to interject a question?
Yeah,
Yeah, Joe.
absolutely.
What if you just attach like a conditional use permit process to it? That way, the person who owns it files for the conditional use for the business, runs it while they're there. If they decide to sell the house, whatever, that separate piece can either be transferred to the new owner, or they can just terminate it when they move and they have zero interest in doing anything with it anymore.
Not a
That's
bad
what-
idea, but conditional use is usually not remarkably
We're
well
trying
looked
to
upon.
Well, conditional use,
simplify it.
special use, call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
Or we could put an exception in
Yeah, why
there
couldn't
for
the new owner just
pre-existing.
rent out the space to the person who wants to continue running the business?
Well, the problem, what Penny's highlighting, to what Jeff's saying, I think the problem is just the wording, because it says the home occupation shall be conducted by residents of the dwelling. So the second you stop being the resident, you
Yeah,
got
we
a
gotta clean
problem
up some
under this
language.
regulation.
We have to clean up some language. We're trying to make it as liberal as
And
possible, I think.
say, for instance, if you had a large successful business, sure, you can keep running it, but if the owner of the dwelling owns it, you're having to transfer the ownership of that thriving business to the owner of the house, and maybe you don't want to do that. That may not be such a simple thing or financially feasible thing to do that. But Lee, I think it's because it's home industry. There are zoning districts where we can actually have, say, an auto repair business.
To your point.
But the fact that in most districts, it's a home industry, or there are home industries that the DRB has to approve that are tied to that home, to the ownership of the home. That's what does. I mean, you could change the regs and say, motor vehicle repair shops are allowed in such and such a district, and then it would be fine. But right now, it's tied to a home industry.
And I think, Penny, that is because way back when we did that language, it was concern about absentee owners having a business. And so it was tied to home occupation and home industries.
Well, that's true.
That's the history. Whether it's right, that's the history.
Well, that may be right, though. I mean, you have to think about all the different examples, or that's what I do, and you can only imagine so many. But what about an entertainment venue? What if somebody has an entertainment venue at their home, and they let somebody else run the entertainment venue?
Well, that is probably going to come up under our, that specific example is probably going to end up getting caught in our example. We're trying to work on an event venue definition, and that's probably going to get caught up in that specific example.
Okay.
Because that's a particularly loud thing.
So if you folks don't mind just circling back, maybe I'm got myself confused now about home industry, but if you just maybe circle back on home industry and see how you think that, if the wording needs to be changed or not, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so we need to circle back to home industry.
Needs to be clarified, I guess, at the least.
So let me delete the thing that I put in there. Okay. So
Maybe I can just run up some of the other ones.
yeah,
that I-
can you go through your stuff? Penny?
Yes. So going backwards up the list, the next one was signs, double-sided signs. So just confirmation about what the intention is and if the wording should be assured a little bit or not. So in the wording, the regs might want to be a little more clear. Is it the maximum square footage for one side of the sign, or if the sign has two faces, it can be that maximum square footage on both sides of the sign?
Can I answer that according to how the state regulates like real estate signs? It's both sides of the sign. It's the square footage of the sign itself.
So if the rule says you can have 10 square feet,
It
then
can be
both
both
sides,
sides,
both
yeah.
sides could be 10 square feet, or the
That's-
total is 10 square feet?
Well, the sign itself is 10 square feet.
Yeah, it's the
Don't care if you
sign.
have it on
On
both
one
sides
side or
or
both,
not. Right.
obviously, yep.
That's how the
Well,
state
ours-
looks at it.
Our regs talk about the face of the sign. Could you just check on the,
Yep, we'll look at that.
the regulation?
Yep, double-sided signs, okay.
The next one is sidewalks, and I don't really know that this is anything you can particularly attend to, but they're part of subdivision review, and they're listed most specifically, though they're peppered throughout in the village centers. So most of this came up during this Jacobs Hill subdivision, which is in the village center. But it's up hills, as you know, and it's gravel. They're gravel development roads.
Mhm.
So we just considered it not physically feasible to have sidewalks there. But we are just always wondering, when do sidewalks come into play in developments for the DRB? What is the plan? When are they appropriate? When are they not? Many of our developments have gravel roads. Should the regulations reflect really the issues we're dealing with in Underhill of gravel roads and hills and village centers? Should there be a smart plan for sidewalks? I mean, somebody at some point going to say, let's do sidewalks here. Are they leaving it to the DRB to make that initial, we should have this development do sidewalks, but they don't connect to anything else?
Okay,
Or so just something for the planning commission or someone
Yep.
to think about.
I see these both on your list, number 12 and number 13, okay.
So seasonal camps is another one. We had a little bit of a challenge during seasonal camps because recreational camps are year-round these days. I mean, people like to recreate in the winter, so they could go to their camp and want it insulated. And we want camps to be more energy efficient. We want all buildings to be more energy efficient. So the regulations end up saying that it can only be occupied for 180 days or less. And it also has to have something about it that's not permanent, as in it needs to be not insulated, or it needs to be not hooked up to a utility, or it needs to not have a septic system. And I believe it can be any one of those. But I think that I could plan a year-round house and leave off one of those, and it could be considered a camp. Because, for instance, you could be off-grid and you don't connect to a utility. So you just complied with part of the definition for camp. So we just wondered what the intent of this is. Is it really mainly that you don't want it year-round, and is it self-policed?
Okay,
Or is it policed by the neighbors? Or, how is this policed, this whole camp idea?
okay.
So then driveways, when we talk about camps, who ends up being in charge of the road and driveway trail ordinance? Who ends up making those changes?
No, that was the select board.
Okay.
Well, I think that's right, but Brad, when I told Brad we wanted copies of the regs printed out, he also, without me asking, told me that we should have copies of the road ordinance, so.
Oh, we had those.
Yeah.
They're sitting in a,
Well, I'll just give you two instances of camps and access to camps, just in case it crosses your paths and the regs at all.
so
Is
Penny, camps
Yeah.
tended to be off the beaten path, like class 4 roads or or even sometimes landlocked. So the concept was that there's certain times of the year that in order to really get to it, you would have to do a lot of development type work, like driveways, power. So the concept for the camp was that it would be rustic. And that
So
it was
in other words,
unlikely that there
You'd
would
go.
be certain times of the year that you would actually use it, yeah. Because you're not allowing a regular driveway, you're not bringing in,
Okay.
yeah. That was,
Okay, so it would be a someplace that's inhabited part-time that does not actually have access to it.
or a difficult access, like a class 4 road that's not maintained.
So let me just tell you where there were two camps that we had to deal with and figure out what to do about them in a subdivision. And one, I don't know how we came up with the other one, if it was a conditional use or something. But I think one, Lee, is at the end of Ellsworth Meadow. Does that sound?
Oh, yeah, I know that, yeah.
It was way at the top,
Yeah.
and I believe that we made it, I don't think I was I wasn't at this hearing, that we made them improve the road. We made them bring an improved driveway up to the camp, but they also, because they were at the end of a development road, they had to, I believe, improve the development road too. So they ended up spending a lot of money
That never
to
happened.
get that road improved.
Yeah, they never really did that.
Oh,
I don't really know that there's anyone up there at the top of that road. Well, you know Mark Hamlin, right?
yes,
It's up behind him.
okay.
That's his road.
And I think they put in a septic system too. And I don't know if they turned it into, they may have turned it into a 4-season into a single family residence after it was a camp.
Boy, Mark would know the answer to that.
But the other instance was that there was Marty Baslow was
Yeah.
subdividing at Warner Creek.
Yeah.
And he wanted to subdivide a lot that could have a camp on it. And one of the issues was there was no access to the camp. And we don't really say anything about that in the regs, as far as I know. Does it need to fulfill the driveway requirements? Does it need to be a part of a development road that's upgraded? Should there be access that's different for camps, but it doesn't need to have that full access? And in the end, what happened was he had a logging road that went part of the way up. But the fire department wasn't thrilled about that because they want to be able to get to any structure that can be inhabited, even if it's part-time. So they have to get this rating or certification, and if they can't put out the fires and can't get to a structure, then they get dinged by the insurance.
Yeah, well, that's more than Underhill. I mean, I got dinged by the fire department because I live more than 12 miles away. So,
Well, they get dinged, and if the fire department gets dinged, that's like a big problem because that's the insurance that they have to get.
not the
So
fire
the
department.
question really comes down to is should access, as far as the DRB knows, access should be a driveway to a camp, and a driveway has certain standards. And this camp was way out in the boonies and would have been really expensive to bring up to driveway standards. So we let him keep the lot, besides which, for driveway standards, it has to be below a certain grade in addition, and this was not. But it followed a logging road, so it got a waiver because it followed a logging road. So we just need to know, can there be different access for camps, or do we have to have the applicant bring a driveway up to a camp for camp permit?
Got it. We will do that one.
Can I ask you one clarifying question? And the camp, is that still habitable only half the year?
That's what the definition says. If you can look at that definition and ferret out whether you think it's clear or not, it's supposed to be inhabited only half the year plus be minus something that a house would have.
Got it.
It's sort of a negative definition.
Well, a house would have a driveway.
That is a good point. We will go through those, Penny. Thank you.
The PRD one is just simply in the subdivision regulations. It says that a PRD or a PUD needs to submit as part of the application building elevations and exterior design specifications. And I can see that relative to an urban PRD, but we don't have any sort of design review anyway here. And it could be quite financially burdensome to an applicant to have concrete building plans and have an architect do elevations. So for instance, the Albertini subdivision, they didn't plan, it wasn't a developer who was planning to build 12 houses at one time and submitting building elevations. So it would be nice if you want to keep it standing, that's fine. If you want to remove it, or if you want to give the DRB the ability to waive it, or if you want to have it only in certain districts, zoning districts, if you could just think about that.
Got it.
That's the design standard we're talking about? Whether you waive.
Whether
design
it's a
standard?
PRD or a PUD, do we require,
Concrete building plans and elevations.
and no, I mean, and then she used the example of the Albertinis, which they didn't do that. They just did a subdivision plat.
It sounds like largely a cleanup in the regs. when we get to
Yeah.
that.
We didn't require it, but it didn't say the DRB could waive it. It would be nice if the DRB had some choice, either choice in the matter, or you folks said it wasn't necessary.
Got it. We will get to that one.
Okay, another one that I talked to Brad about today was contiguous land, and I believe he told me that you folks had already looked into that.
Brad, we have looked into a little bit. Brad has I did call Brad about something else, and Brad told me this came up, and Brad has a strong feeling, I think is the right word, that contiguous land cannot be separated by a road.
Right. But
Except the state has a different interpretation.
I know, I'm just saying, I'm just sharing for what it's worth.
Well, Brad's wrong. The state has a rather large law about that, actually, is that a town road can divide a piece of land into two separate parcels.
Well, that's a state road,
That's not just a state road, any town road.
town road,
Yeah.
but not a subdivision.
That's
It depends on, that sounds like a natural subdivision, Lisa. It really, the most
That's exactly
basic
what it
issue
is.
here, the very most basic, is that the words contiguous land are nowhere in our regulations.
Right.
But they are in the definition. And so the definition actually has a regulation in it. So the most basic question is, should that information be brought into the regs? Instead of, we're defining something that it's not even in the text isn't even in the regs.
Yeah, so we need to look at the definition of contiguous land.
That's the
Right
most
here.
basic thing, but if you kind of dig into it further, you're then trying to figure out, is the definition actually saying,
Yeah.
this is contiguous land, or this is not, here's an example of not contiguous land.
Got it. Yeah, we will go through it.
And then also, once you're doing that, you might want to look at, do you want to add something like natural subdivision? And if the contiguous land is compliant or doesn't comply, it's non-compliant. So that's an issue that isn't covered by our definition either. So the land across the road, if it doesn't comply with a, say, buildable lot in that zoning district, is it treated one way versus something across the road that does comply?
Right.
So maybe two different instances.
Mine had to comply when I bought Casey's Hill. And then the last moment, they found out it wasn't what the acreage was. And so they had to give me some of the land to make sure it was a buildable lot.
Right, because the road splits it and the
Yeah.
piece on each side has to
So
either
the
get a
grandson did
waiver
not get
or.
as much land as he had.
Got it.
You'll notice in that handout, that little bit more research I did on contiguous land, Brian, that Andrew says, he said that case law does not necessarily support that. The case law has shown, and the town lawyer could explain it better, that you may just have a pre-existing non-compliant lot, and that may actually be able to be developed if it was existing before these regulations. So it's a
Yeah,
little more complicated once you start digging into it.
I think when we get to this one, we might try to see if we can get Brad to come to a meeting for
That would
15
be
minutes.
great.
So,
That would be great. And one of the issues is that the DRB has handled it different ways because it's not really clear the way we're supposed to handle
Got
it.
it.
So,
okay, so it looks like we're adding to our to-do list, double-sided signs, sidewalks, seasonal camps, PRD, and contiguous land.
that is it.
I think you have a couple month break, Penny, before we're in the bug again. Because we're not through the old list yet. thank you for all of this, and thank you for taking time to do this and join.
Thank you. I'll see you again.
Okay,
Thanks, Penny.
bye, Penny.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you to you as well. Bye. Okay, so I'm sure it looked like other people are keeping notes too, but we will get to those. But I think we are gonna box them all off for right now and go back to the stuff we're already working on.
Is she on the DRB?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but she's
she's
an alternative.
alternate.
not
Yeah, but
alternate.
she's very, the short version is she's been keeping a running list along with Charlie, the head of the DRB, of issues that have come up over the years. And Penny has graciously volunteered to sort of consolidate that list and give us additional details on them. And because we're basically trying to work our way through this backlog of issues that the DRB has identified over the years. So that's the background behind all this. So Penny's giving us round 2 of stuff to work on, but we're not going to round 1 yet. Which takes us to,
We keep adding to it.
I know we're adding, I know, that's why I told Penny it's gonna be a couple months. Yeah, we're adding on our own too. Okay, so what I had from last week was, David,
Yeah, I
you
don't
were
think-
circling back on barn and accessory
I looked
structure.
it over and I don't think we need to change anything that I presented the last time.
Okay, so then on that note, let me just review, oh, thank you, Bill. Let me
Any
just
extra
quickly
spreadsheets?
review.
I was not here.
It should be, this spreadsheet. We don't have a good printed version of this spreadsheet, do we?
Yeah.
Oh, I have, do we have,
these?
let's make a
Yeah.
photocopy of that one for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want it now?
Doesn't matter.
David, so
I don't know how to
so,
copy
Yeah,
it.
we
Let me-
were
can
talking
I
about
just-
definitions, basically.
can I just get what you were doing with barn though? Because I had not finished writing it because we had decided that you
Oh,
were gonna revisit it.
well, this is a copy of it here.
Oh, can
I'd
you,
like a-
barn, stake defined, barn accessory structure. So we're adding, you're saying these 3 changes are good upon your
Yeah,
review?
I think that
Okay.
covers the issue, basically. And, we get away from the confusion that we had.
So let me just read them almost as much for the recording as anything. So anyone, if they have any comments. So what we're doing is we're adding 2 definitions and amending 1. So we're adding barn, state defined. One of various farm structures that fall under the jurisdiction of the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. And we're adding barn, accessory structure, use. One of various structures accessory to the principal structure. See accessory structure, use. And does that, I guess, because we're using the term barn in other places, so we're trying to catch it, basically, right?
Well, there's
You got, like,
confusion
that
on the
little
barn
structure
issue.
or not?
So it comes up. So I think
Yeah.
we should just cover it and say
Add
it's
this
just
definition.
an accessory structure, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So these all feed back into this next one, which is accessory structure. This came up, yeah, I can give you the background in a second. So accessory structure, use, a structure use that is, delete size, add the word appearance. So accessory structure use would read, a structure or use that is clearly incidental, customary, and subordinate in overall appearance, but not necessarily in size, to the principal structure or use of land on the same lot. And then we keep the examples. Does anyone have any objections to that? It's what we talked about last time, so. Okay, can I keep this, David? And add it back in and give it to you next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure they're in this
Right.
aggregated copy. So basically, the background is, if I can get it all right, this sort of came up because it's like our barns, like let's say you build a building that looks like a barn, but maybe it's not like an agricultural barn. You sort of go down this black hole of like, what's an accessory structure to your house? How do we want to regulate those? Which is what we've
Home
been,
business.
Or I feel like you should put like a non-livable structure, because I feel like a lot of people can say, I'm building a barn, and the next thing you know, it's like,
so that's covered under a thing
That's
called
part
an
of the problem.
accessory, so that would be an accessory dwelling
Right.
regulations. And those
So
have a
that would
whole separate
change.
set of rules. animals.
that changes to it.
Yeah,
So,
which is a big thing we've been doing because they're like a hot topic, obviously. So, yeah.
so it started again, funny, it's a pop-in thing again. She wanted to have a wedding venue. She wanted to build a barn, called it a home occupation. But they kind of got caught up on the concept of barn and accessory structure and home occupation, and it took them 2 or 3 years before they finally moved forward with it. So she wanted a definition of a barn.
That takes us to Sandy. You were looking at agriculture and farm structure.
Yeah, I failed to complete my task. What I did do was to look through all of the Word document of our regs and identify areas where those appear.
Mhm.
Did that part, but I didn't review the farm structure one, which I had problems with identifying the number of swine and goats that you have in order to qualify as a farm structure.
Do you want to just bump that to next meeting?
Yes.
I confess I'm having a very hard time remembering what this note meant. It said duplexes / ADUs.
That's
What
the
was-
Act 47.
Okay,
And Roy had a question
Okay.
about whether if you had a duplex, could you have an ADU as well?
oh,
right.
yes.
No.
No,
No, if
Okay.
you have a duplex can be an ADU. You can have one as your primary residence and the other
Okay.
as your ADU. But you can't have it unless you're applying for a threeplex, triplex.
right.
So no, and a
So our
duplex is
regs are
a,
good then because, okay.
yeah.
Okay,
well, we gotta change a lot of the ADU stuff still.
yeah, which is on our
Yeah.
list, but Roy's specific thing was not really an issue. Okay, that's good. And the other thing I had, which is now a discussion point, that I don't think anyone had this signed, is I think when we left it, we were talking about utilities, which is a definition of utilities on a steep slope, sort of says public utilities. And we were debating, if memory serves, can you run septic right along with that down that steep slope where the public utilities are? For what it's worth, when I
That was
mentioned
Baslow too.
oh, it was making work for us left and right. So that is actually what I called Brad about to solicit his opinion. And what he told me was he didn't see an issue with it. That doesn't mean that's what we have to go along with, but I thought I would ask Brad and pass along his feedback. So I think if memory serves correctly, that's sort of where we were. And I don't remember if we'd gone around the table and got people's opinions or whatnot, but I think where we left off last meeting was, do we need to revise this definition or this section of, to deal with, I hate to call it steep slopes, because steep slopes is not the issue. It was the definition of a utility is really.
And
What's
it
the
says
clarify?
public utility, and
Yes.
in my mind, that's a state designation. It's
Town owned,
the
like
Public Service
public water
Board.
line,
It's not
Private septic lines,
Yeah.
right. It's not a privately designated utility.
but he got permission to do it.
Well, I think without question, the language needs to be
So
Yeah,
the
but
language,
cleaned up,
change
okay.
like, without question. I think, I just wasn't sure if people thought if there's any debate on this, or if everyone just agrees that we need to clean up the language and that everyone's fine with.
So I have a question. So let's say you clean up the language and you don't allow it for private utility, but it's already been granted one time.
We probably granted things one time, a lot of times, right?
I don't know the answer to that.
So here's a question also, you run a septic line under the power lines, right along that line, basically. The utility service people sometimes have to drive up those lines. And is that a good idea over a septic line?
I think you can't. I think that's a right of way that has to stay open, that you can't.
For a septic line?
Yeah, I think because if the utility has to be able to get there at any time.
Yeah.
And you can't then put a system underneath it that would put them in jeopardy.
Is the question, could you run a septic line underneath an electric line?
I think that's what you
Well,
were
I'm just
asking.
wondering if it might damage
An
the
easement,
septic
from my
line.
experience,
Probably
if it's
not.
private, no, it has to be outside.
I think
Yeah, I
technically you
agree.
couldn't. I don't think you can do anything under the electric company easement, technically.
If it's a general easement, you
Yeah.
know, the electric companies usually fall into a general easement of another sort running along a road, you know, or
Yeah.
in a road easement or whatever. Depends on the wording of the easement.
That's kind of not, I'm not trying to be cute. I think that's almost not our,
Yeah, it's a public.
it's almost
utility
not our
easement.
issue. That's your issue with the electric company if you violate their easement, right?
Yeah, right. It depends on what the wording is.
Well, I think in the deed, the easement would be described.
Plan that shows it there.
In the deed, the
Sure.
easement would be described.
Yeah, I would think.
But no, it would be.
Yeah.
The electric company would have had to have had it described in the deed.
Yeah.
So what this language actually says, just so everyone knows, the exemption from steep slopes says utilities, including telecommunications facilities, power generation facilities, and transmission lines regulated by the Vermont Public Service Board.
Can you read
That's
that one more
looking to
time?
an engineer, basically. Is it gonna harm a septic line if they run power equipment, you know, a tractor or whatever, over it? While they're going up the line to
Well,
repair something?
The way, so I do civil engineering, land development, that's what I do. And what I do typically, we don't put anything private in public easements because and this is out west, so their language is a lot cleaner because they had the east
Experience.
to screw it up first and then they, you know, like built off of that. But if you put anything in private in an easement and the utility company has to come through and do stuff and they damage anything of yours, it's on you to fix it. It's not them to fix it. So as a homeowner, personally, I wouldn't put anything of mine in anything that they're gonna be driving up and down and putting their booms in the ground and possibly crushing.
Oh, yeah, they have the right to do that.
Yeah, because if you're only
Yeah,
gonna put
they
your
have
sewer
to be
pipe
able
like
to do
2
that.
feet deep in this soggy soil, like you're
Yeah,
asking for it to get crushed.
right.
I would strongly recommend not doing that.
Or what it takes, I don't know,
That's what I'm
special
saying, if you
piping
see a
of some sort
plan
that would
that
be
has that in there, I would
suitable
stamp it
for
as
it.
a DRB person, as approved that way, I would probably.
Well, I think, you know, an engineer may say, well, look, we can put piping that's suitable for being driven over, buried 2 feet or whatever.
Well, the
So-
state regs might say something too, for like your, you know, wastewater, like, I don't know. The Vermont Department of Environmental Quality might have regs that
Do you work for a civil engineering firm?
I'm a self-employed, I do, so. Been doing it for,
You have the name of your company?
I can do it too.
Okay.
I am licensed here now. So if anyone cares about my background, I grew up in Ohio and then moved to Arizona and lived there for 20 years. And then, was it 16 months now, we moved here for, you know, we're climate change migrants, I guess. And our kids.
So you like the rain and the cloudy weather so far?
I mean, it's changed. I mean, I'll be honest.
It's
Like,
a change, yeah.
I would get depressed from sun, if you can believe that. Like when you get like 15, 20 days in a row where it's just blue and
That bothers
sunny.
you?
Yeah, I got on my nerves.
Welcome to Vermont.
Yeah, now we're in the
You'll
other
love
extreme
it
where
here.
January.
That'd be great, yeah.
But,
No, really, welcome.
thanks.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've been doing civil engineering out here. I've been doing my own business since 2009.
Great.
Yeah, for sure. Great background for this.
Good tools for this.
So I think we've got to get some more information on this, actually.
What's
The information is, first of all, can an engineer specify certain piping that would be okay for equipment that the power company may have that would be driving over to repair something?
I think it would, but to me as a civil engineer, I wouldn't stamp a set of plans with a line in the easement. I mean, you can find an engineer that's willing to do that, I guess, great, but
Probably.
from my point of view, I wouldn't even, if somebody came to me and said, hey, come up with a design for me to put my sewer in this area, I'd say, find another engineer, I'm not gonna stamp it.
Well,
The question is, what does the
Well, it's
town
not
have to
the-
say about it?
Yeah, well, why would you want to leave that open to, I mean, my understanding of a utility easement is that it's their easement, you can't build in it.
Most
That's
of them
my
are
understanding.
specifically, if it's written as an electrical easement, it's for electricity. If it's written as a gas easement, if it's written as a public utility or a ingress egress. It's usually for public, like, when I say public, I mean like utilities that aren't owned by the property owner. So it's the electric company, gas company, water, if it's a public water line, if it's a public sewer line, those things.
Well, okay, you've got a private owner, he's up on the top of a hill, basically,
Yeah.
he's got a driveway going up, and the power line is going up on an easement, and the owner is giving the easement to the power company and saying, also, I want to run the utility, I want to run my septic line on this area, because, it's just the way the land is going to work. It's not going to work the other way, so this is.
See, for me, this in some
What you
way
can
is
do.
not super, I think that's super interesting
Yeah.
background. I think the question for us, so let's imagine a slightly different scenario and whether we want to allow it. So let's say the electric easement's running up, no one in their right mind, would be my takeaway from this, wants to put a septic line underneath it. However, if this language in this section just said, utilities, including everything I read to you, plus septic. I know that's not how you would write it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, let's just say it said also septic. Well, then I think what you could do is not go under the electric line and go 10 feet over from the electric line outside their right of way and clear and
Well,
run a separate septic. That's what we
we'll
would do.
We'll literally, if
That's what we
the
would do.
electric's here and the easement's here, we'll put the sewer like
Right
right on the edge.
Which
Or-
would be, we'd be making legal. So the question for us, I think, is do we want to allow
Or
it?
you
Is
don't
that-
write it.
Is this steep slope too?
Yep, this is all about steep slopes.
Okay.
I mean, otherwise it doesn't, this is under steep slope exemptions, and it says there's an exemption to get your electric line up that steep slope. The question is, do we also want to, I actually think this is very interesting background, because what we're saying is, okay, no one in their right mind is going to run it under the electric line in that same area. So do we want to let them clear 2 feet over from that right of way to put up their septic line?
But don't they have a certain right of way that, like, they're building in this, but let's say it's a 20-foot use, which they're using, but their right of way is 35 feet? Isn't that typically what it is?
I have,
It's typically, well,
Yeah.
we'll probably read
I
it.
mean, I'm a firm believer that land development's very gray and municipalities want to be very black and white with the code, and I get that. So maybe write the language that, it's this, unless there's, circumstances to the property that prohibit you to do it this way. And then you can do a case by case of that, because, well, this lot is unique. I mean, I run into unique situations all the time, and you have municipalities that are like, well, no, it has to be done this way. Like, well, I know the code says that, but the reality is that, this whole lot is, basalt. Like, we can't put it 4 feet deep because it'll cost $10 million to blast all it out, right? So, okay, well, in this case, that's what so if you're dealing with a steep hill or a steep slope situation, you're already kind of in a
Gray
unique
area anyway.
circumstance. And so you can say, well, you have like a flagpole lot, like you have this 20-foot piece of property, and then you have your lot, and within that 20 feet, you got 10 other things going. So there's no option but to do it for that situation.
well, I think to what Jeff's saying, like the question we have, unless, you all jump in, is right now, you have to go to the DRB to run the septic line up, the steep slope, because it's not specifically exempted under
Right.
this exemption. So is that what we want?
Yes.
If you're on a steep slope, do you need to go to the DRB to run your septic line? Or do you get a specific other exemption saying, hey, I'm not advocating for either one of these, to be clear. Or do we want to say, hey, yeah, you can run that septic line.
So we're
Here's a
sending
built-in
them,
exemption, just like it's an electric line. Just go for it.
So we
Those are
send
two
them
totally
to the-
different outcomes.
we send them to the DRB.
Right now, it has to go to the DRB.
And what are the DRB looking at to answer it?
Well, the DRB would look at all the other conditions that go into a steep slope. What's the site disturbance like? Is it customary and residential? Or is it customary and incidental? How many square feet are you disturbing? It's a different review, right? One is a review by the DRB, the other is just saying, yeah, you can run your septic line up the steep slope.
No. We're getting this confused because this is all about a public service board utility.
Oh,
being
yeah,
exempt.
right now that's exempt. Yes, agreed.
Yeah,
I think the question that is being asked in here, and I'm not saying we should do it. I think the question here is, should septic also be exempt?
that
That's what
isn't
Penny's
her
asking,
question.
isn't it?
No, she's asking us to clarify that it's public utilities such as telecommunication facilities, power generation
Right. Does it
facilities.
include septic lines is what she's asking.
What's the page?
Where, she didn't even say anything about septic.
Sure. It says is exemption C intended to include private/personal utilities. Example, a septic line, a power
Oh,
line,
okay, I see.
or
Example,
cable,
Maslow.
or cable to, that's where I think she's getting this from.
It's exactly.
It
what
actually
it's done.
says past applicants more Basel. Or a cable. So the specific examples Penny uses is, does this example, I'm with Sandy that I think this language is actually super clear. But
then
I mean, that begs the question, do you want to do something else or leave it as is? But is exemption C intended to include private/personal utilities?
No.
Example, a septic line, a power line, or cable to a private residence. Those are the specific examples she uses.
What would a cable be? That would be a public utility.
I
wouldn't
think
it?
she means cable.
Television.
No, I don't think it's covered
Yeah.
because
That's what I think you ought to be
That's a
able to have that.
private.
this definition's really tight. Because if you read it, it says utilities including telecommunications facilities and power generation facilities, which facilities, like those must be specific things the utilities put in, like the transformers or something, and transmission lines regulated by the Vermont Public Service Board. I think it's hard to argue this means anything other than electrical.
Is cable and telephone not regulated by? the
Well, it would
Public
say,
Service Board, I guess?
well, the problem, I think, for the definition, and I don't know if we need to address this, but it says utilities, including telecommunications facilities, power generation facilities, and transmission lines. When they say power generation facility, I'm assuming they mean like a substation.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Well, I hear poles, transformer and pads, risers. For
Yes.
So all
Yeah,
those.
yeah, all that stuff. I agree with you. Yeah.
So that's not necessarily a major transmission facility, that's
Facilities is anything to get their stuff
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
So
But
that's the being a pole.
transformer.
I'm not sure it even includes like if, not that this is how they do this stuff anymore, but I don't know if it even includes like running fiber optic up the side of a steep slope.
Well, I think that's what we were just talking about.
If it was on an existing power line, if they were running it on the existing power line,
Well, they could,
then you'd be fine. I think.
that would be, yeah. They wouldn't bury it if they could use a telephone pole.
I don't know. I feel like I'm blabbing on, but I mean, the question is this C.
It says, it's regulated by the Vermont Public Service.
Pretty
Board.
clear, right?
We don't
Yeah.
have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
Maybe that should be the
They-
first part, because it almost sounds like the only thing they're regulating are transmission.
So maybe it
lines.
should read utilities regulated by the Vermont Public Service Board,
Yes,
including.
yes.
That feels like a good cleanup.
Yeah.
Does anyone oppose that?
You mean all,
Can you say it
you
again?
mean you're moving the regulated to include clearly all three
Yeah.
of those, which it
So,
does.
so the way it would read, David, is utilities regulated by the Vermont Public Service
Yeah.
Board, including telecommunications, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah. Okay. Is anyone opposed to that? That feels like an easy, clean change. Okay. Thanks, Sandy.
Sorry if I muddied it up.
No, not at all. That was super helpful. Where'd you go? Okay. That's fixed.
Man,
Unbelievable.
Trying to impress the almost
Like,
new guy.
like waiting. Thanks, Lee.
We'll be done in 1 day.
Well, we figured out how to log on. That's a win. Well, let's look ahead. So that's what we had for this week. The question is, maybe we could look at, double-sided signs feels like it's easy, like we could do it on the fly.
I don't even know why that's an issue.
Let's see. Is the wording in the regs clear enough? 316F. Maybe we can knock this out. Hold on.
What's paid?
Oh, I'm getting it. Yeah.
316F.
316F is on page 51. Measurement. The sign area shall be defined as the total area of one sign face as measured from the outer edges, excluding any supporting frames.
Oh my
Panel.
God.
Oh my God.
Brother.
Who wrote that?
I don't know, it makes me sleepy reading.
Should just be done by the square foot area
Yeah,
of the
it's
sign,
just total. Instead of saying one face, just say
the square foot area.
sign.
They ought to be able to have a
Sign area.
As the
Sign on both
total
sides.
square, as the total square footage.
Who wants a one-sided sign?
You're only getting people going one way.
Could be just total area.
Just, yeah, the total square, like real estate signs are defined by 6 square feet.
If you want good
That's it.
sign language, go into the Las Vegas planning. You can read hundreds of pages about signage.
Should we just incorporate the Las Vegas sign?
Yeah. Well, after that, size matters there, man. It's the exact opposite of Vermont.
That's what our sign, can you just say if it's
Maybe,
legal in Vegas, it's legal here.
Yeah.
Put in there, the total area.
What happens in
by
Vegas
the
stays in Vegas.
Exterior, measurement,
Say it again,
not
Dan.
the face.
Say that again.
The exterior, I don't have the exact
Oh,
one,
okay.
but it should be, defined by the exterior, measurement of the sign,
Yeah, I
and
think the
not the
word face is
face.
throwing it off.
That makes it confusing, when
I
you
gotta
say
find
one
real estate.
sign
So it
face.
could be like, the sign area shall be defined as the total area of the outside edges, from the outside
The
edges.
surface
As
area.
the total area as measured from the outer edges.
Yeah.
Why don't we just say the sign area shall be defined as the total
Or just
area
the surface area.
as measured from the outer edges?
Yeah,
So the reason it says total area of one sign face is
So you
because-
don't get penalized.
So you don't think, oh, do I count both sides? Do I add them together? Like the question we had before.
Right, yeah.
So that's where they're.
Of
Yeah, it
one
says that.
sign
I think you
face.
just say, well, your sign is allowed to be 10 square feet. Then you can make a 10 square foot sign and you can slap your logo on this side and that side.
Yeah.
It's 10 square feet.
It does that.
Instead of saying like 10 square
Yeah.
feet plus 10 square feet, I actually have 20 square foot. You know what I mean?
There's a bunch of square foot limitations on the signs.
They're defining the size of the sign by one of the faces, not both. That's why. It's-
Yeah. I think it's actually,
It's still kind of weird. That's why if you say the outer area, like you can't really,
Yeah, I know.
you know, like,
the total,
or like the surface area of your sign can't, because if you have some, if your sign's the shape of a fish, it's gonna be, you gotta,
Figure it out.
yeah.
maybe we do have to do this one next week.
I'll get you the real estate language for signs.
Okay,
I'm trying to pull that up now.
okay, well, let's do that. That can be your parting gift to us, Lynn. Okay, well, let's think about next week while we look that up. So we've got home industry. I think we revisit that as a group. I mean, that's just more something to discuss. I guess we can work through signs as a group. Why don't we just work through all of these as a group next week, right? I don't think there's anything for anyone to really take home until we dig into them a little bit.
Try to take a picture of that. It might give you my contact.
Okay.
My wife made it, and I have two of them. This one is hard to find.
There's quite a definition of sign in the back.
There's a registered kid.
Signs were a real issue. I think it's back in the days of Jan de Vries and stuff, but we spent weeks and weeks. And it's very confrontational.
Wondering.
Okay,
And it all started because of villain of signs.
Oh, yeah. How big can they be?
Yes.
Is it actually, but it won't give you, uncomplicated.
all right.
Maybe so it would create.
Well, I think I would like to.
One more
Yep.
thing. procedurally.
Yes.
Because it is the first meeting after town meeting.
Yeah.
Is there anybody whose term was up who is going on? You have to, there's something you're supposed to do. I don't remember what it was. Procedurally.
Well, I think your term is up, isn't it? So you have to ask the selectmen to be reappointed.
I have to ask Brad. I mean, A, thank you for pointing that out. Is it just me or are there other people whose term is up? I have to look at the town report. Yeah. Let me ask Brad. Who
Because
needs to be
there is
reappointed.
something,
Yeah, no, thank you.
You do have to be reappointed.
It's
Yeah,
probably
no,
in the town plan,
We have to do that.
like way over there.
What's your,
Okay,
upstairs
so
is lit.
one, I have to do that. Two, ask Brad who is to be reappointed.
Yeah, it's in the, town
Yeah.
report.
Yeah, I've been keeping track of it.
Here?
It's upstairs
Oh,
on
wow.
the landing. That's why we're all sitting there going, oh.
Okay, I will do that before next week. I will do it when I get home, actually. Okay, well, I propose, since it's Lee's last meeting, I brought some cheese and meat and Prosecco. So, ooh, got a toast Lee.
Should we adjourn?
Did you bring glasses? Yes, thank you, Carolyn. So I would vote that we adjourn 20 minutes earlier to thank Lee for her 6 amazing years.
How many?
Woo!
Oh, it's gotta be more
Is there-
than that.
Is there a second to that motion? Second. David, all in favor? Aye, thank you.